have no notes because my phone died. But my sister and I had an interesting relationship because it wasn't particularly close when we were little. It got very, very close after both of us were married. And it got closer when, well, Chris was a very important part of the growth of the relationship between my sister and me. In 1971, Missy and Chris left their children with Chris's parents and drove all the way to Missouri, to Jefferson City, Missouri, where Carl and I had our 2 children, and picked us up, and we left our 2 children with Carl's mother and father and drove to Biloxi, Mississippi for the first vacation that we ever had. We could not swim in the Gulf of Mexico in Biloxi, Mississippi, because previous to that we had had a hurricane that it was closed, the beaches were closed to military, active duty military personnel. So we drove down to Dauphin Island and swam in the ocean there. And then we drove across the bridge to Pensacola, and we went to Fort Barrancas where we had lived, and came back, and it was the most awesome vacation for 2 young couples to have. We were in each little room. We each had a $30 each for the whole week in Biloxi, Mississippi. Each had a kitchenette, and we cooked alternately for each other. It was just, I can't even describe how much that meant to Carl and I. And the visits that we had from Missy and Chris throughout the years that they were married only ended when Chris could not travel anymore for any length of time. But my sister also had she was very quirky, and she had some likes and dislikes that were awful. And I have to tell the chicken story. So I think Samantha, who was here, was 11 at the time, and my grandson, Adam, who was turning 13. And Craig was there to visit, and it was Craig's birthday and Adam's birthday were 16th and 17th of July, and I was cooking chicken for dinner. And I cooked chicken thighs. So we sat down for the celebratory birthday dinner for the 2 of them, and my sister said, "You know I don't like chicken thighs, I only like chicken breasts." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry." She said, "Well, you know I don't like chicken thighs, I only like chicken breasts." And I said, "I'm sorry, but this is their birthday." Well, my sister got up from the table, got into the car, because we were traveling together, and I had my 2 grandchildren with me, and she got up and got into her car, and she drove away, and she was gone for 3 days. It's like, how in the hell am I going to get home? She came back. I guess she was happy after she had taken her trip to Glacier National Park or wherever she went, or someplace up that she could take all of her photos, but she came back like nothing had ever happened, and we got in the car and we drove. Actually, I think we drove to Idaho, and Cheryl, we went to see you, and I have pictures of that too. But she did things like that with me because she would get upset with me, and there was nothing I could do. But I loved her. She was the kindest person, and the most generous person, and the most loving person, and the most frustrating person that I have ever known. She loved music, but she loved 60s music. And so we listened to a lot of 60s music, and she didn't understand the kinds of music that I listened to, which was a lot of classical music. And one time I was visiting, and I was playing a particular piece of classical music, and Chris said, "Oh, I know what this is. This is Ancient Airs and Dances." And Missy said, how did you know that? He said, I just know that. You like classical music? And it was the kind of thing that, he did not tell her some of the things, and I think one of you mentioned the fact that he liked certain kinds of music, but he really didn't let her know that he liked these things. He let other people know. And Chris was the kindest person. That's one of the things that none of you mentioned. He was the kindest person. I can't even describe how kind he was. The kindness, you did describe it in a way that he had people that stayed with him and they took care of other people. You forgot to mention Robin. Robin lived with them for quite some time. But he had a kindness that was never really, we saw it, but he didn't, I'm sorry, I don't have notes. He was the kind of kindness that was so quiet that you only noticed it later. And he was the best brother-in-law anybody ever could have had. And I missed him horribly when he died. And I miss my sister now. And I see little things. I hear a piece of music. I hear somebody say something. I see a picture. Of course, I have photos of hers framed in my house. My favorite one is the hotel up in the island in Michigan, pardon me? Mackinac, yeah, the Grand Hotel. I have a picture there. I have pictures of I have the picture of the horses. I have that picture. And I have the stories behind how she went camping and all that. She was the most amazing person and the most frustrating person. But when you were talking about moving, when we would move from pillar to post, she had a hissy fit. She screamed, she hated it. I can't leave my friends, I can't leave my friends. 2 years later, when we got ready to move again, it was like, I can't leave my friends, I can't leave my friends, I can't. And then every single time, I can't leave my friends, but 3 years later it was, I can't leave these friends. So when we were at U-High in Columbia, she spent 1 year, her senior year, in high school. She was the one that gathered the people to have a reunion. Her class had never had a reunion. We had sort of a mini reunion, and then they had the 40th year reunion. They had never had a reunion. Had it not been for my sister, who had all these friends and had gathered all of her friends together, they would never have had a class reunion. But that was the kind of person she was. She was the friend that everybody misses her. There's a part of her in everybody, and there's a part of Chris in everybody, and my children adored their aunt and uncle, and I miss them horribly, and that's all I have to say.